The crystal chandelier above cast fractured diamonds of light across the marble floor of Velvet, Manhattan's most exclusive nightclub. I shifted uncomfortably in my borrowed dress, a black number from Lily that hugged my curves too tightly and made me feel like an imposter among the city's elite. The music thrummed deep in my chest, a steady beat that matched my anxious heart as I clutched my vodka soda, condensation making my fingers slick. "Emma, stop fidgeting," Lily whispered, her glossy red lips brushing my ear. "You look gorgeous. Besides, we're celebrating tonight, remember? New job, new beginning." I forced a smile, though my eyes continued to scan the crowd nervously. Lily had dragged me here to celebrate my new position at Hudson Publishing, an entry-level editorial assistant job that barely covered my rent, but it was a foot in the door, a world away from the small-town bookshop where I'd spent the last 3 years after college. I know. I just feel like everyone can tell I don't belong," I murmured, taking a quick sip from my drink, the cold liquid doing nothing to soothe the knot in my stomach. "That's because you're the only one not having fun," Lily countered, her eyes glittering with mischief. My best friend since college, she'd always been my opposite, bold where I was cautious, outspoken where I was reserved. Her natural confidence had served her well in the fashion industry, while I hid behind the pages of manuscripts that never became my own stories. That's when I first noticed him. He entered without fanfare, but the crowd parted like the Red Sea. 3 men in dark suits flanked him, their eyes constantly surveying the room, hands positioned too strategically to be anything but security. But it was the man in the center who commanded attention. Tall, with broad shoulders beneath an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my annual salary. His dark hair was styled back from a face that belonged on Italian Renaissance paintings, all sharp angles and perfect symmetry. A 5 o'clock shadow accentuated a jawline that could cut glass. "Holy shit," Lily breathed beside me. "Do you know who that is?" I shook my head, unable to tear my eyes away as the man moved through the club. Everyone seemed to know him. Nods of respect, quick handshakes, women's lingering glances. "That's Dante Russo," Lily hissed, her fingers digging into my arm. "The Russo family owns half of Manhattan's real estate and probably the other half through shell companies. Word is, they're connected to things nobody talks about." My throat went dry. Even I had heard whispers of the Russo name, the family that operated in shadows, with businesses both legitimate and otherwise. The kind of people normal girls like me never crossed paths with. "Let's go to the other side," I suggested, suddenly feeling exposed under the lights. But Lily's attention had already shifted. Her body tensed beside me as she stared across the club. "Emma, that's Michael over there." I followed her gaze to see her ex-boyfriend, the one who'd left her heartbroken just 3 weeks ago, draped around a blonde in a dress that could have been painted on. Worse, he was leading her toward a VIP table, the same one where Dante Russo was now seated, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. "Ignore him," I advised, feeling Lily stiffen beside me. "He's not worth it. He told me he needed space," she whispered, her voice cracking. "And now he's with her at Dante Russo's table? He must have been cheating the whole time." I watched as Michael leaned in to whisper something to Dante, the blonde giggling beside him. Dante's expression remained impassive, but he nodded once, eyes scanning the club with calculated indifference. Then, as if drawn by some invisible force, his gaze landed directly on me. The world seemed to slow. Dark eyes, almost black in the dim light, held mine across the crowded room. Not a casual glance, but a deliberate assessment that made my skin prickle with awareness. I couldn't look away, caught like prey in the sights of a predator who had all the time in the world to decide what to do with me. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, something more dangerous, before he turned back to his conversation. "I need another drink," Lily declared, dragging me toward the bar, unaware of the exchange that had just transpired. We ordered another round, and I tried to shake off the lingering sensation of being watched. 10 minutes later, Michael appeared at the bar beside us, his cologne too strong and his smile too practiced. "Lily," he said smoothly. "What a surprise. You look good." Lily's fingers tightened around her glass. "Who's your friend, Michael?" "Vanessa," he replied, not bothering to introduce us properly. "Listen, I was hoping we could talk. I'm here with some important business associates." I bet you are, Lily cut in, her voice razor sharp. I placed a warning hand on her arm. Lily, let's just go. Michael leaned closer, lowering his voice. Don't be like that. Mr. Russo specifically asked about you. This could be good for your career. I mentioned you work for Vogue now. You're using me to impress your new boss? Lily hissed incredulously. It's not like that, Michael insisted, though his eyes darted nervously toward the VIP section. Look, I need this connection. Just come say hello. Be your charming self. For old time's sake. I saw something break in Lily's eyes. The realization that she'd meant nothing more to him than a potential networking opportunity. Before I could stop her, she threw back her drink and headed toward the VIP table, Michael scrambling after her. Lily, wait, I called, abandoning my drink to follow. By the time I reached them, Lily was already standing before Dante Russo, whose dark eyes were now watching her with detached amusement as Michael made awkward introductions. The blonde, Vanessa, hovered possessively at Michael's side, shooting daggers at Lily. Mr. Russo, this is Lily Chen, the one I mentioned from Vogue, Michael was saying, his voice pitched higher than usual. Dante's gaze flicked briefly to Lily, then beyond her to where I stood. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, interest, before returning to its cool mask. Ms. Chen, he acknowledged with a slight nod. His voice was deep, tinged with the barest hint of an Italian accent. Michael speaks highly of your connections. Lily's shoulders stiffened. I'm sure he does, just like he spoke highly of his commitment before I found him with his intern. Michael's face drained of color. Lily, this isn't the time. No? Lily's voice rose. When is the time, Michael? When you're done using me to climb your pathetic corporate ladder. One of Dante's security men shifted closer, but Dante raised a hand, stopping him. His eyes gleamed with what looked almost like enjoyment at the unfolding drama. Perhaps we should all calm down, Dante suggested, though he made no move to defuse the situation. I am calm, Lily said, her voice steadying as she turned to face him directly. I just want to make sure you know exactly who you're dealing with. Michael isn't loyal to anyone but himself. Michael grabbed her arm roughly. That's enough. Something snapped inside me. Without thinking, I pushed forward, wedging myself between them. Let her go, I demanded, surprising even myself with the steel in my voice. Michael's eyes widened, as if seeing me for the first time. Stay out of this. This doesn't concern you. She's my friend, so it absolutely concerns me, I countered, feeling a strange power coursing through my veins. I was tired of being invisible, tired of watching bad things happen to good people. Your friend needs to learn when to shut up, Michael hissed, his grip tightening on Lily's wrist. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. I looked down at my full drink, then at Michael's smug face, then at Dante Russo watching the scene with those calculating dark eyes. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I stepped forward, arm raised as if to throw my drink at Michael, but at the last second I pivoted and flung the contents straight into Dante Russo's face. The club went silent. Droplets of vodka soda clung to Dante's perfect jawline, dripping onto his undoubtedly expensive suit. His security surged forward, but again, he held them back with a barely perceptible gesture. My heart hammered against my ribs as the reality of what I'd done crashed over me. I'd just assaulted one of the most dangerous men in New York. My life was over. Dante slowly removed a handkerchief from his pocket and dabbed at his face, his eyes never leaving mine. I expected rage, violent retribution, but instead, his lips curved into a slow, predatory smirk that sent shivers down my spine. I like brave women, he said, voice low enough that only those of us standing there could hear, though I usually prefer to get their names first. I swallowed hard, unable to look away from those midnight eyes. Emma, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the music that had resumed. Emma Collins. Emma, he repeated, making my ordinary name sound like something precious. We're not finished, you and I. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And in that moment, standing before this dangerous man with alcohol still dripping from his perfect face, I realized I had made a terrible, irreversible mistake. Not because I'd defended my friend, but because something in his dark gaze made me want to make that mistake again. Sleep eluded me that night, my mind replaying the moment when vodka splashed across Dante Russo's face on an endless loop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his slow smirk, heard his voice. "We're not finished, you and I." Lily had dragged me out of the club minutes later, half laughing, half terrified at what I'd done. "You're either the bravest or the craziest person I know," she'd said as we huddled in a taxi. No one stands up to the Russos. Morning light filtered through my tiny apartment's blinds as I dragged myself from bed. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Lily and a text. "Are you alive? Call me." I sighed, splashing cold water on my face. Today was my first day at Hudson Publishing. The last thing I needed was to be distracted by thoughts of dangerous men with dangerous smiles. The Hudson Publishing offices occupied the 20th floor of a gleaming midtown building. I smoothed down my only professional skirt, a modest navy pencil that had seen better days, and tried to project confidence as I approached the receptionist. "Emma Collins. It's my first day." The woman barely glanced up. 19th floor. Editorial assistants are with HR first." Swallowing my nerves, I rode the elevator down 1 floor and found myself in a sterile waiting area where 3 other nervous-looking 20-somethings sat clutching portfolios. Newcomers, like me. I took a seat, preparing for the standard onboarding process. 2 hours of paperwork and orientation later, I was finally escorted to the 20th floor, the real Hudson Publishing floor, with its bustling energy and wall-to-wall bookshelves. My supervisor, Janet, a harried woman in her 50s with reading glasses perpetually perched on her nose, showed me to a tiny desk outside her office. "You'll be assisting me and occasionally Mr. Reynolds," she explained, referring to the senior acquisitions editor. "Coffee runs, manuscript organization, scheduling, nothing you can't handle if you're as sharp as your resume suggests." I nodded eagerly, determined to prove myself. This job was my lifeline, my chance to climb from slush pile reader to actual editor someday. I couldn't afford distractions. By lunchtime, I was deep in a manuscript Janet had assigned me to review, scribbling notes in the margins. I barely noticed when the elevator dinged until an unusual hush fell over the office. Looking up, I froze. 4 men in dark suits had entered the floor. 3 were clearly security, the same men from the club, and the 4th was him, Dante Russo. His tall frame was impeccably dressed in a navy suit that made everyone else in the office look underdressed by comparison. His dark eyes scanned the room methodically until they found me. My heart slammed against my ribs. How had he found me? Why was he here? The receptionist hurried forward. "Mr. Russo, we weren't expecting you today." His lips curved into that same dangerous half-smile I remembered from last night. "Impromptu visit. Is Richard in?" Richard. As in Richard Hudson, the publisher and owner. The man whose name was on the building. "Of course," the receptionist gushed, already reaching for her phone. "I'll let him know you're here." But Dante was already moving, not toward the executive offices, but directly toward my desk. The entire floor watched in stunned silence as one of New York's most powerful men stopped before the desk of the newest, lowest-ranking employee. "Ms. Collins," he said, my name rolling off his tongue like he owned it. What a surprise. I gripped my pen tightly, willing my voice not to shake. "Is it?" "You're the one in my workplace." His smile widened fractionally, amusement dancing in his dark eyes. "Your workplace happens to be a subsidiary of Russo Enterprises. I'm merely checking on my investment." The blood drained from my face. Hudson Publishing belonged to him? How had I missed that crucial detail in my research? I didn't know, I managed. Clearly. He glanced at the manuscript on my desk. "Your first day, and already buried in work. Admirable." I fought the urge to cover the manuscript with my arms like a schoolgirl hiding a test. "Just doing my job, Mr. Russo." "Dante," he corrected, his voice lower. "I believe we're past formalities after last night." Heat rushed to my cheeks as I became acutely aware of every eye in the office watching us. Whatever they were imagining had happened last night was undoubtedly far more scandalous than the reality. "Mr. Russo," a booming voice interrupted. Richard Hudson himself had emerged from his office, hand extended. What an unexpected pleasure. Dante turned, clasping the older man's hand firmly. Richard. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd see how our newest acquisition is performing. Up 20% since you came on board, Richard said proudly. The capital injection for our international division was exactly what we needed. As they spoke, I noticed Janet staring at me with undisguised curiosity. I shook my head slightly, hoping to communicate that I had no idea why Dante Russo had singled me out. We should discuss the Frankfurt Book Fair strategy over lunch, Richard was saying. My assistant can make reservations. Already taken care of, Dante interjected smoothly. Delmonico's at 1, but first I'd like to borrow Ms. Collins for a moment. My head snapped up. Me? Richard looked between us, confusion evident. Emma? But she just started today. Precisely why I'd like a word, Dante replied, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. Fresh perspectives are valuable, don't you think? Before I could protest, Dante gestured toward a small conference room at the end of the hall. Richard, clearly unwilling to deny anything to his powerful investor, nodded his approval. Of course. Take all the time you need. On wooden legs, I followed Dante down the hall, painfully aware of his security detail trailing behind us, and the collective gaze of my new colleagues burning into my back. Once inside the conference room, Dante dismissed his men with a flick of his wrist. They positioned themselves outside the door, effectively cutting us off from the rest of the office. Alone with him, the room suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. He studied me silently for a moment, and I forced myself to meet his gaze despite the hammering of my heart. Is this how you punish everyone who throws a drink in your face? I finally asked, finding my voice. Show up at their job and humiliate them? His eyebrows rose slightly. Is that what you think this is? Punishment? Isn't it? You track down where I work. I didn't need to track anything. He interrupted smoothly, leaning against the conference table. Hudson Publishing has been part of my portfolio for over a year. Your employment file came across my desk this morning during my regular business review. Imagine my surprise when I recognized the name of the woman who doused me with vodka last night. I swallowed hard, unsure whether to believe this coincidence. So you just happened to visit today? I visit all my businesses regularly, he replied with a casual shrug that somehow still looked elegant. Though I'll admit, your presence expedited today's schedule. What do you want from me? I asked directly, tired of whatever game he was playing. Something darkened in his eyes. Hunger, curiosity. I couldn't quite name it. An explanation for starters. That drink was clearly meant for Michael, yet you chose to throw it at me instead. Why? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so consumed with fear over potential consequences that I hadn't fully examined my own motivations. I don't know, I admitted. Michael was hurting Lily and you were just sitting there watching, like it was entertainment. I guess I wanted to shake things up. By assaulting me? His lips twitched with amusement. By making a point, I corrected, finding a reserve of courage I didn't know I possessed. That just because you have power doesn't mean you should use it to intimidate others, or allow others to do so in your presence. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Most people spend their lives avoiding drawing my attention, Ms. Collins. You managed it within moments of our first encounter. I wasn't trying to draw your attention, I countered. And yet, he said softly, here we are. He moved toward me then, his movements fluid and predatory. I held my ground, though every instinct screamed at me to retreat. When he stopped, he was close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtle, with notes of sandalwood and amber. Have dinner with me tonight, he said, the words more command than invitation. I blinked in surprise. What? No. His eyes widened slightly, as if no one had ever refused him before. No, I repeated firmly. I don't know you, and what I do know is concerning. Concerning, he echoed, amusement coloring his tone, an interesting choice of words. You know what I mean. The rumors about your family are just that. Rumors. He cut me off, his voice hardening slightly, You seem like someone who prefers to make her own judgments rather than rely on hearsay. Wasn't that the point of your little display last night? He had me there, and he knew it. I had acted impulsively, based on what I saw, not what I'd heard. Still, I wasn't about to agree to dinner with a man who might be connected to organized crime, no matter how magnetic his presence or how intense his dark eyes. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Russo, but, Dante, he corrected again. Mr. Russo, I continued deliberately, but I'm going to decline. I'd like to keep my professional and personal lives separate. Something flashed in his eyes. Challenge, determination, perhaps both. You threw a drink in my face in public, Emma. I think we're well past professional boundaries. The way he said my name, intimately, possessively, sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. That was a mistake, was it? He stepped closer, and I felt the conference table press against my back, because I think it was the most honest interaction I've had in years. His proximity was overwhelming, his scent enveloping me, his height forcing me to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Power radiated from him like heat from a flame, drawing me in even as I recognized the danger. One dinner, he pressed. Tonight. I'll send a car at 8. I didn't say yes, I reminded him, struggling to keep my voice steady. His lips curved into that same dangerous smile from last night. You haven't said no convincingly either. Before I could form a response, the conference room door opened. Richard Hudson peered in, his expression apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, but our lunch reservation, of course. Dante straightened, putting a respectable distance between us with a fluid step. We're finished here. He turned to leave, but paused at the door, looking back at me with those penetrating dark eyes. 8 o'clock, Emma. Wear something nice. And then he was gone, leaving me breathless and confused in the suddenly empty conference room. I sank into a chair, my legs no longer able to support me. What had just happened? Had Dante Russo, rumored Mafia boss and certified intimidating billionaire, just asked me on a date because I'd thrown a drink at him? And why, despite every rational thought screaming warnings in my head, was part of me actually considering saying yes? My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. Looking forward to tonight. Car will pick you up at your apartment. D. I stared at the screen in disbelief. How did he have my number? How did he know my address? The message was clear. He could find me whenever he wanted. The question now was whether I would run, or face whatever dangerous game he was playing, and why the most terrifying realization of all was that I already knew my answer. By the time I left work, whispers had spread throughout the office. The new girl had a connection to Dante Russo. I caught sidelong glances and hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when I approached. Janet had watched me like a hawk all afternoon, her expression vacillating between curiosity and concern. Emma, she'd said as I was gathering my things to leave. Be careful. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. We both knew who she meant. Back in my apartment, I paced the worn hardwood floors, phone clutched in my hand. I'd called Lily 3 times, but she wasn't answering, probably still sleeping off last night. I stared at the text from Dante again. 8 o'clock. The rational part of my brain screamed to ignore it, to turn off my phone and pretend none of this was happening. The impulsive part, the same part that had made me throw that drink, wondered what would happen if I said yes. At 7:30, I was still in my work clothes, having made no decision. Or perhaps, by not deciding, I had already decided. At 7:45, I changed into the only dress I owned that might be considered nice. A deep emerald slip dress Lily had convinced me to buy for job interviews. It was simple but elegant, falling just above my knees. At 7:55, I removed the dress and pulled on jeans and a sweater instead. At 7:58, I panicked and put the dress back on, hastily applying mascara and lip gloss. At precisely 8 o'clock, my buzzer rang. Heart pounding, I approached my apartment's intercom. Yes? Car for Ms. Collins, came a deep, professional voice. I pressed my forehead against the cool wall. This was my last chance to back out. to return to my ordinary life, to the invisibility I'd always found so comfortable. I thought about Janet's warning, about the rumors surrounding the Russo family, about the dangerous glint in Dante's eyes when he looked at me. I pressed the button to unlock the building's front door. 5 minutes later, I was sitting in the back of a sleek black Bentley, the leather seats softer than anything I'd ever touched. The driver, one of Dante's security men from earlier, hadn't said a word beyond a polite greeting. The privacy partition was up, leaving me alone with my tumultuous thoughts. We drove through Manhattan, the city lights blurring outside my window. Instead of heading toward the restaurant district, however, the car turned toward the Hudson River, eventually pulling up to a private marina where luxury yachts bobbed gently in the water. "We're here, Miss Collins," the driver announced, opening my door. I stepped out, confusion and apprehension making my heart race. "This isn't a restaurant." "Mr. Russo is waiting aboard," the driver replied, gesturing toward the largest yacht, a stunning vessel with sleek lines and soft lights illuminating its deck. Every instinct told me to get back in the car and demand to be taken home. This wasn't a public dinner. This was Dante Russo getting me alone on his private territory. Yet my feet carried me forward, down the dock toward the gangway where another suited man waited. "Ms. Collins?" he greeted with a curt nod, extending his hand to help me aboard. The yacht was even more impressive up close, at least 80 feet of gleaming perfection. I was led through an elegant main cabin, all polished wood and cream leather, to an open-air deck at the stern. There, a table was set for two, complete with crystal glasses and flickering candles, and standing beside it, looking out at the water, was Dante. He turned as I approached, his dark eyes moving over me in a slow appraisal that made heat rise to my cheeks. He'd changed from his business suit to more casual attire, though casual for Dante Russo still meant perfectly tailored black pants and a charcoal button-down shirt, with the sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms. "You came," he said simply, as if my presence surprised him. "Against my better judgment," I admitted. His lips curved into that now familiar half-smile. Honesty. Refreshing. He pulled out a chair for me, and I sat, acutely aware of how vulnerable I was. We were alone except for his staff, on his yacht, docked, but ready to depart at any moment. "If you're planning to take me out to sea and dispose of my body for throwing that drink at you, I should warn you that Lily knows where I am," I said, only half joking. Dante laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face, making him look younger, less dangerous. Almost. "If I disposed of everyone who annoyed me, the harbor would be full," he replied, taking the seat across from me. "Besides, I told you, I admired your courage." A server appeared, pouring wine into my glass, a deep red that caught the candlelight. "I didn't specify a restaurant because I thought you might appreciate privacy," Dante continued. "Your colleagues were already talking. Thanks to you," I pointed out. He inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the point. A regrettable side effect, though not one I'm entirely sorry for. I took a sip of wine to steady my nerves. It was exquisite, rich and complex on my tongue. "Why am I here, Mr. Russo?" "Dante," he corrected automatically. "And you're here because I invited you and you accepted. You didn't give me much choice." His eyes narrowed slightly. "The car would have left if you hadn't come down." "I don't force women to dine with me, Emma." Something in his tone made me believe him, though I wasn't ready to fully relax. "Fine." "Why did you invite me?" He studied me for a moment before answering, as if deciding how honest to be. "Because you surprised me. Do you know how rarely that happens in my world?" "I imagine people work very hard not to surprise you," I said carefully. A flash of something, appreciation perhaps, crossed his features. "Exactly. Everyone around me is predictable. Employees who agree with everything I say, business associates who laugh at jokes that aren't funny, women who..." He paused. "Who what?" "Who want something from me," he finished. "Money, status, connections. They play roles they think I want them to play." "And I didn't," I supplied. You threw a drink in my face, he reminded me, amusement dancing in his eyes, decidedly off script. The first course arrived, delicate scallops on a bed of pureed cauliflower. I took a bite, the flavors exploding on my tongue. Whatever else Dante Russo might be, his chef was extraordinary. So I'm here because I'm unpredictable, I summarized. A novelty. His expression hardened slightly. You're reducing what I said to make it sound trivial, isn't it? You're bored with your perfect life, so you track down the girl who dared to disrespect you for a bit of entertainment. Is that what you think this is? I set down my fork, meeting his gaze directly. I don't know what this is. That's the problem. You show up at my workplace, intimidate my boss, somehow get my phone number and address, and whisk me away to your private yacht. If you were anyone else, this would be stalking. Rather than becoming angry, Dante looked thoughtful. You're right. His admission surprised me into silence. My interest in you is unusual, even for me, he continued, his voice lower. When you stood up to Michael and then to me, I saw something rare. Authenticity. You weren't calculating the consequences or the advantages. You were simply real. Most people are real, I countered. Not in my world. A shadow crossed his face. In my world, everyone wears masks, including me. There was a vulnerability in that admission that caught me off guard. For a brief moment, I glimpsed the man behind the power, someone possibly as trapped by expectations and reputation as anyone else. The main course arrived, perfectly seared steaks with truffle risotto. We ate in silence for a few minutes, the gentle rocking of the yacht and the distant sounds of the city creating a strange, intimate bubble around us. Tell me about yourself, Emma Collins, Dante finally said. Not what's in your employment file, the real you. I hesitated, uncertain how much to reveal. There's not much to tell. Small-town girl moves to the big city with dreams of becoming an editor. Currently living paycheck to paycheck in a shoebox apartment with more books than furniture. And throwing drinks at powerful men in your spare time, he added with a smirk. Despite myself, I laughed. That was a first, actually. I'm honored. You shouldn't be. It wasn't my finest moment. His expression grew serious. It was brave. Misguided, perhaps, but brave. You stood up for your friend when no one else would. I thought about Lily, about Michael's grip on her wrist, about the years of friendship that had prompted my impulsive action. She would have done the same for me. Dante nodded slowly. Loyalty. Another rare quality I admire. What about you? I asked, surprising myself with my boldness. The rumors say... I know what the rumors say, he interrupted, his voice cooling. That I'm a mobster, a criminal, that my family has blood on its hands. I didn't respond, waiting. He sighed, swirling the wine in his glass. My grandfather came to this country with nothing. He built a business, import, export, during difficult times when certain shortcuts were sometimes necessary. My father expanded into real estate, legitimizing most of our interests. I've continued that path, moving us further into publishing, technology, legal enterprises. Most. Further, I noted his careful word choice. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Perceptive. Yes, some connections remain from the old days. Some businesses operate in gray areas. But I'm not what they say I am, Emma. Then what are you? His dark eyes held mine. A man with power, and the burden that comes with it. A man who's learned that trust is a luxury few can afford. That sounds lonely, I said softly, surprising both of us with my empathy. Something shifted in his expression, a momentary vulnerability quickly masked. It's the price of my position. As dessert was served, a delicate chocolate soufflé, I found myself increasingly drawn into Dante's world. He spoke of his business interests with passion, revealing an intellect that was both impressive and intimidating. He asked thoughtful questions about my love of books, actually listening to my answers instead of waiting for his turn to speak. In another reality, with another man, this might have been the perfect date, but reality intruded when my phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Where are you? Michael is telling everyone you left with Dante Russo? Dante noticed my expression change. Problem? I set my phone down. Just Lily, worried about me. Because you're with me, he stated rather than asked. Can you blame her? You don't exactly have a reputation as safe. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. And yet, here you are. Here I am, I agreed softly. The air between us changed, charged with a current I couldn't name. Dante leaned forward slightly, his gaze dropping briefly to my lips before meeting my eyes again. I should go home, I said abruptly, the intensity of the moment overwhelming me. It's late, and I have work tomorrow. If he was disappointed by my retreat, he didn't show it. Of course. Within minutes, he had escorted me back through the yacht to the waiting car. At the gangway, he paused, taking my hand in his. His touch was warm, sending electricity up my arm. Thank you for coming tonight, Emma. Thank you for dinner, I replied automatically. He smiled, a real smile this time, not the practiced half-smirk I'd seen before. I'd like to see you again. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I don't think that's a good idea because of what people say about me. Because of what I feel when I'm with you, I admitted, the words escaping before I could stop them. His eyes darkened with interest. And what do you feel? I pulled my hand from his, needing distance to think clearly. Danger, confusion, things I shouldn't feel about my boss's boss's boss. I'm not your boss, he corrected. I'm an investor. There's a difference. Not enough of one. He studied me for a long moment, then reached into his pocket and pressed something into my palm. If you change your mind. It was a business card, heavy stock, minimalist design, with just his name and a phone number embossed in black. Good night, Emma Collins, he said softly, his accent caressing my name. Good night. Dante, I replied, using his first name for the first time. His smile told me he'd noticed. As the car pulled away from the marina, I watched his tall figure standing at the edge of the dock, utterly still, watching until I disappeared from view. Back in my apartment, I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto my bed, mind racing. The evening replayed in my head, the luxury, the conversation, the way Dante's eyes had followed my every movement. It had been surreal, like stepping into someone else's life for a few hours. I placed his business card on my nightstand, telling myself I would throw it away in the morning. But as I drifted off to sleep, my dreams were filled with dark eyes and dangerous smiles, and the lingering sensation that my life had shifted irrevocably onto a new and precarious path. The next morning, Lily was waiting for me at the coffee shop across from Hudson Publishing, her eyes wide with disbelief. You have exactly 10 minutes to tell me everything before I explode, she demanded as I slid into the booth across from her. You went on a date with Dante Russo? The Dante Russo? It wasn't a date, I protested weakly. Lily raised a perfectly arched eyebrow. Private dinner on his yacht isn't a date? What universe are you living in? I sighed, wrapping my hands around my coffee mug. It was complicated. He's my boss, sort of. His company owns Hudson Publishing. And nothing. We had dinner, we talked, he drove me home. I carefully omitted the electricity between us, the way his eyes had lingered on mine, the business card now tucked in my wallet where I'd transferred it instead of throwing it away. Lily studied me skeptically. Emma Collins, you're hiding something. You're doing that thing where your left eye twitches slightly. I reached up to cover my eye reflexively. It does not. It absolutely does. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Did he try anything? No, I said quickly. He was a perfect gentleman, actually. Lily sat back, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. You know, Michael's been telling everyone that you and Russo had some kind of previous arrangement. That's why you threw the drink. Anger flared in my chest. That's ridiculous. I'd never met him before that night. I know that, Lily assured me. But you have to understand how this looks. No one throws a drink at Dante Russo and ends up on his yacht the next day unless there's something going on. She was right, and the realization made me groan. My reputation at work is already destroyed, isn't it? Not destroyed, she hedged. Just complicated. Half the office probably thinks you slept your way into the job, and the other half thinks you're being coerced. Great, I muttered. So I'm either a gold digger or a victim. Lily reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Or you're the girl who had the guts to stand up to a creep and caught the eye of the most eligible bachelor in New York. Depends on how you spin it. I managed a small smile at her optimism. I don't think I want to spin it at all. I just want to do my job and be left alone. But do you? Lily studied me closely, because you've got this look when you talk about him. I've never seen it before. What look? Like you've touched a live wire and aren't sure if you want to let go. Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. The Strand, Rare Books section, 12:30 p.m. I'll have lunch delivered. My pulse quickened. I hadn't given Dante my new number, which meant he'd gone through considerable effort to get it. It's him, isn't it? Lily asked, reading my expression. What does he want now? To meet at the Strand bookstore during my lunch break, I admitted. Lily's eyes widened. Are you going? I should have said no immediately. Instead, I hesitated, the memory of last night's connection lingering. I don't know. Emma. Lily's voice grew serious. I know that look is exciting, but be careful. Michael told me things about the Russo family. Michael is a liar, I interrupted. Even liars sometimes tell the truth, she countered. Just promise me you'll be smart about this. I nodded, though uncertainty churned in my stomach. I promise. At work, the whispers continued, but I held my head high, focusing intently on the manuscript Janet had given me. By noon, I'd managed to lose myself in editing, almost forgetting about Dante's text. Almost. At 12:15, I gathered my purse, told Janet I was taking lunch, and headed for the elevator. I told myself I was just going to tell him to leave me alone, to establish boundaries, not because I wanted to see him again. The lie was thin, even to my own ears. The Strand was crowded with the usual mix of tourists and locals, but as I made my way to the rare book section on the 3rd floor, the crowd thinned. This area, with its glass cases and hushed atmosphere, was typically empty during lunch hours. Today, it was empty except for one man. Dante stood examining a first edition behind glass, his profile striking against the warm wooden shelves. He wore a charcoal suit again, but more casual than yesterday's. No tie, the top button of his crisp white shirt undone. His security was nowhere to be seen, though I suspected they weren't far. He looked up as I approached, and that now familiar jolt of awareness shot through me. You came. To tell you to stop, I said firmly, though my racing heart belied my confident tone. You can't keep showing up in my life like this. Instead of looking chastened, he smiled. Yet here you are. I crossed my arms defensively. You're making things difficult for me at work. People are talking. People always talk, he replied dismissively. Does their opinion matter so much? When it affects my job? Yes, he studied me for a moment. Would you like me to speak to Richard? Make it clear that any rumors are unfounded? No, I said quickly, horrified at the thought. That would only make it worse. Then what would you have me do, Emma? He asked, stepping closer. Pretend I don't want to see you again? The directness of his question caught me off guard. I don't know. This is all happening too fast. His expression softened slightly. Then let's slow down. Lunch in public, just conversation. No pressure. As if on cue, a delivery person appeared with a large bag emblazoned with the logo of an upscale deli. Dante thanked him, and led me to a small reading table tucked between shelves of antique leather-bound books. Your timing is suspicious, I noted as he unpacked sandwiches and salads. I may have had him waiting downstairs until you arrived, Dante admitted, without a hint of embarrassment. I didn't want the food to get cold if you were late, or didn't come. The thoughtfulness of the gesture weakened my resolve. I sat across from him, accepting the sandwich he offered, turkey and avocado on artisanal bread, somehow exactly what I would have chosen for myself. How did you get my new number? I asked after taking a bite. Your employment file, he replied casually. As I mentioned, I review all new hires in my companies. That's an invasion of privacy. He paused, considering. You're right. I apologize. His easy apology surprised me. Men like Dante Russo, powerful, wealthy, dangerous, didn't typically acknowledge when they were wrong. You keep surprising me, I murmured. He smiled, the expression transforming his face. Good. Then we're even. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, surrounded by the hushed sanctity of rare literary works. It was surreal, sharing lunch with this enigmatic man in one of my favorite places in the city. "Why here?" I finally asked. "Why the Strand? Your employment file mentioned your literature degree from NYU. I took an educated guess that you might appreciate this place." He glanced around at the shelves. Was I wrong? "No," I admitted. "I come here often. It's peaceful. You see? I can learn about you through legitimate means, not just by invading your privacy." I couldn't help but smile at his self-deprecating tone. "A novel concept. Speaking of novels," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "I brought something for you." He placed a small package wrapped in brown paper on the table between us. Curious despite myself, I unwrapped it to reveal a weathered leather book. Opening it carefully, I gasped. "A first edition Jane Austen?" I whispered, running my fingers reverently over the title page of Pride and Prejudice. "This must be worth—" "It's not about the value," he interrupted gently. "Your resume mentioned 19th century British literature as your specialty. I thought you might appreciate it." I closed the book carefully, pushing it back toward him. "I can't accept this. It's too much." "Why?" "Because gifts like this come with expectations." His expression hardened slightly. "Is that what you think of me? That I'm trying to buy your affection?" "I don't know what to think," I admitted. "Men like you don't pursue women like me without reason." "Men like me?" he echoed, his voice cooling. "And what kind of man am I exactly?" I met his gaze directly. "Powerful? Dangerous? Rumored to be connected to things I don't want to know about?" He didn't deny it, which somehow made it worse. Instead, he leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "And women like you?" "Ordinary," I said simply. "No connections, no wealth, nothing to offer someone in your position." "Except honesty," he countered. "Courage, intelligence. Rare qualities in my world. As I've mentioned," I shook my head, frustrated by his persistence. "Why are you doing this? You could have any woman in New York." "I don't want any woman in New York," he said softly. "Right now, I want to know you, Emma Collins." The sincerity in his voice was disarming. I looked down at the precious book between us, at his long, elegant fingers resting inches from mine on the table. The attraction I felt was undeniable, but so was the danger. "I should get back to work," I said, standing abruptly. Dante rose as well, towering over me even in my heels. "Keep the book. No expectations, no strings. If you decide you don't want it, donate it to a library." "I can't." "You can," he insisted gently. "Consider it an apology for the workplace rumors." Before I could argue further, he reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face. The casual touch sent electricity down my spine. "I have business in Chicago for the next few days," he said, his voice low. "When I return, I'd like to see you again, if you're willing." I should have said no. Instead, I found myself nodding slightly, unable to deny the pull between us, despite every warning bell sounding in my head. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. "I'll text you when I'm back." I watched him walk away, the book clutched to my chest like a shield. What was I doing? Getting involved with Dante Russo was playing with fire in every sense. Yet as I returned to Hudson Publishing, the weight of the book in my bag reminded me that there was more to him than the rumors suggested. Dangerous, yes, but also thoughtful, intelligent, and strangely vulnerable in ways I was only beginning to understand. 3 days passed without word from Dante. I threw myself into work, staying late to review manuscripts, earning approving nods from Janet. The office gossip gradually turned to other matters, as my connection to Dante Russo began to seem like a one-time oddity, rather than an ongoing scandal. On the 4th day, as I was leaving the office, a text arrived. "Back in town. Dinner tomorrow? I'll pick you up at 7. I stared at the message for a long moment before responding, "Okay." That night, Lily helped me pick out an outfit, a simple black dress that was elegant without trying too hard. "You're really doing this," she marveled as I applied mascara in my tiny bathroom mirror. "It's just dinner," I insisted, though we both knew it was more. With a man who has his own security detail and probably an offshore account in the Caymans. I lowered my mascara wand. Lily, if you're that worried. I'm not worried, she interrupted, though her expression said otherwise. I just want you to go in with eyes open. Michael said. I don't care what Michael said, I cut in firmly. I trust my own judgment. Lily's expression softened. I know. And I trust you. Just be careful with your heart, okay? Men like Dante Russo aren't used to hearing no. The next evening, precisely at 7, my buzzer rang. This time it wasn't a driver. Dante himself stood in my building's shabby lobby, a stark contrast to the peeling paint and flickering fluorescent lights. His eyes widened slightly as they took in my dress, a flash of appreciation warming his usually guarded expression. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you, I replied, suddenly shy under his intense gaze. You clean up pretty well yourself. It was an understatement. In a perfectly tailored black suit with a midnight blue shirt, Dante looked like he'd stepped out of a luxury magazine spread. His security waited discreetly by a sleek Mercedes at the curb. Where are we going? I asked as he opened the car door for me. My home, he replied. I thought you might appreciate privacy after the office rumors. Alarm bells rang in my head. Your home? I thought we were going to a restaurant. He studied my expression, then nodded. You're uncomfortable. Understandable. I can have Giovanni drive us to 11 Madison Park instead if you prefer. I have a standing reservation. The consideration in his voice eased my concern slightly. It's just... You don't know me well enough to be alone with me, he finished, his tone matter-of-fact rather than offended. I respect that. Restaurant it is. But as he reached for the car door, I surprised myself by touching his arm. Wait. He paused, raising an eyebrow. I'd like to see your home, I said, the decision crystallizing as I spoke. But I'm texting Lily the address, and she's expecting me to check in every hour. A smile tugged at his lips. Sensible precautions. I wouldn't expect less. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to a towering glass and steel building in Tribeca, where a doorman greeted Dante by name. His security team remained outside as we rode a private elevator to the penthouse floor. When the doors opened, I couldn't contain a small gasp. The space was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, minimalist furniture in shades of gray and black, and most surprisingly, walls lined with bookshelves. You collect books, I observed, moving toward the nearest shelf. I enjoy reading, he replied, watching me examine his collection. Is that so surprising? A little, I admitted. I guess I pictured you more as the type to read quarterly reports than literature. He laughed, the sound warming the modern space. I do read those as well, but there's wisdom in fiction that business reports lack. I ran my fingers along the spines, noting first editions mixed with well-worn paperbacks. Many were in Italian, some in other languages I didn't recognize. You're multilingual, I noted. 5 languages fluently, 2 more conversationally, he said without a hint of boasting. A necessity in international business, and perhaps in other, less legitimate enterprises, I thought, but didn't say. Wine? He offered, moving to an elegant bar area. Please. As he poured 2 glasses of red, I continued exploring, drawn to a black and white photograph on one shelf. A striking woman with Dante's same dark eyes, her arm around a serious-looking young man I recognized as a younger Dante. My mother, he said, appearing beside me with the wine. That was taken a year before she died. Cancer. The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. He handed me a glass, his fingers brushing mine. She would have liked you. How could you possibly know that? His lips curved slightly. She appreciated people who stood their ground, who weren't intimidated easily. I took a sip of wine to hide my smile. Was she like that too? Very much so. My father was the head of the family business then, but everyone knew my mother was the real power behind the decisions. A shadow crossed his face. After she died, things changed. Your father. Dante's expression hardened. He became reckless, made enemies. Eventually, those enemies caught up with him. The implication was clear. confirming some of the rumors about the Russo family's connections. I should have been frightened, but instead, I found myself wanting to understand this complex man better. Is that why you've worked to legitimize the business? Because of what happened to him? His eyes narrowed slightly, assessing me. You're perceptive. Yes, partly. And partly because times change. The old ways aren't sustainable anymore. But some connections remain, I guessed, remembering our conversation on the yacht. Some connections are impossible to sever completely, he acknowledged. But they don't define me or my vision for the future. He led me to the dining area, where a table was set with crystal and silver. A private chef appeared from what I assumed was the kitchen, serving an exquisite meal of handmade pasta and seafood. Throughout dinner, our conversation flowed easily, touching on books, art, my small-town upbringing, his travels around the world. Not once did he mention his business or the power he wielded. Yet it hung between us, an unspoken current. After dessert, a delicate tiramisu that melted on my tongue, we moved to the balcony with fresh glasses of wine. The night air was cool, the city lights stretching before us like a carpet of stars. Thank you for coming tonight, Dante said, his voice low, for giving me a chance despite the rumors. I turned to face him, finding him closer than I expected. Why me, Dante? Really? In the soft lighting, his expression was more open than I'd seen it before. Because when you look at me, you see me. Not my name, not my wealth, not my reputation. Do you know how rare that is? I see all of those things too, I admitted. But they don't blind you to the man beneath. He set down his wine glass, his fingers gently tilting my chin up. That's why I can't stop thinking about you, Emma Collins. My heart hammered against my ribs as he leaned closer, his intention clear. Every rational thought told me to pull away, to run from the intensity of his gaze and the dangerous path we were treading. Instead, I rose on my tiptoes and pressed my lips to his. His lips were soft but commanding, the kiss deepening with an intensity that stole my breath. Dante's hands framed my face with surprising gentleness, contradicting everything I'd heard about the ruthless man who ruled his empire with an iron fist. I melted into him, all rational thought suspended in the heat of that connection. When we finally broke apart, his dark eyes had turned molten, desire and something deeper swimming in their depths. I've wanted to do that since you threw that drink in my face, he murmured, his thumb tracing my lower lip. That's a strange reaction to being doused with alcohol, I replied breathlessly. His laugh was low, sending shivers down my spine. I never claimed to be conventional. The city lights twinkled behind him like a personal constellation, reminding me of who he was, of the power he commanded. This man could buy and sell entire buildings on a whim. He moved in circles I couldn't imagine. And yet, here he was, looking at me like I was the only thing that mattered. This is crazy, I whispered, more to myself than to him. Possibly, he agreed, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Does that scare you? Everything about you should scare me. His expression grew serious. But does it? I considered lying, but the intensity of his gaze demanded truth. Not as much as it should. Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. Lily's hourly check-in. Reality crashed back as I pulled away to text her that I was fine. Your friend is diligent, Dante observed, no judgment in his tone. She worries. With good reason, he acknowledged, surprising me with his candor. My world is complicated, Emma. Dangerous at times. I won't pretend otherwise. The admission hung between us, heavy with implications. Why are you telling me this? Because I want more evenings like this. His eyes held mine, unwavering. And you deserve to make that choice with all the facts. I swallowed hard, torn between desire and self-preservation. What exactly are you offering, Dante? Time, he said simply. To see where this goes, without pressure or expectations. It should have been an easy decision to walk away, to thank him for dinner and return to my safe, predictable life. Instead, I found myself nodding. Okay, I said softly. Time. His smile transformed his face, making him look younger, almost carefree. He pulled me close again, his kiss deeper now, possessive in a way that made my knees weak. The weeks that followed unfolded like a dream. Dante seamlessly integrated himself into my life, never imposing, always considerate of my schedule and commitments. We had dinner at his penthouse twice more, each time ending with increasingly passionate kisses, but nothing more, as if he was deliberately taking things slowly. At work, the rumors eventually died down when Dante didn't reappear. Janet even complimented my editorial instincts on a manuscript I'd championed, making me feel like I was finally being judged on my merits rather than my connections. Then came the Charity Gala, a major publishing event benefiting literacy programs in underserved communities. As a junior employee, I hadn't expected to attend, but Janet surprised me with an invitation. "Mr. Reynolds specifically requested you join our table," she explained, her expression curious. "He was impressed by your notes on the Miller manuscript." Pride surged through me. Perhaps I was making progress on my own terms after all. I told Dante about the gala during our dinner that evening, excitement bubbling through me as I described the recognition. "That's wonderful," he said, his smile genuine. "You deserve it." I hesitated before asking the question that had been nagging me. "Will you be there? As an investor?" Something flickered across his face. Consideration, perhaps. "Would you prefer I wasn't?" The question caught me off guard. I don't know. We've been keeping things separate, and it's been working." "It has," he agreed. "But I won't always be able to stay away from Hudson events. It's a significant investment." I nodded slowly, reality settling over me. "I know. I just worry about the rumors starting again." Dante reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "What if we stopped hiding?" "What do you mean?" "Come to the gala as my date," he said, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "No more rumors, no more speculation, just the truth. That we're seeing each other." Fear and exhilaration battled within me. "That would change everything at work." "It might," he acknowledged. "But hiding hasn't prevented rumors, only confused them. Transparency could be better." He was right, though the thought terrified me. "I need to think about it." "Of course." He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. "Take all the time you need." The gala was 2 days away when I made my decision. I called Dante from my apartment, heart pounding as I delivered my answer. "Yes," I said when he answered. "I'll come as your date." I could hear the smile in his voice. "I'll pick you up at 7. The night of the gala, I wore the only formal dress I owned, a midnight blue silk that Lily had convinced me to splurge on for a college formal years ago. It was simple but elegant, though I worried it would pale in comparison to the designer gowns that would fill the venue. Dante's expression when I opened my door banished that concern. He stood motionless for a moment, his eyes traveling from my carefully arranged hair to the dress that clung to my curves. "You are breathtaking," he said finally, his voice rough with appreciation. The ride to the Plaza Hotel was silent, charged with an electricity that had been building between us for weeks. Dante's hand rested on mine, his thumb occasionally stroking my palm in a gesture that had become familiar, yet still sent shivers through me. As we approached the entrance, flashbulbs popped. The event was significant enough to attract photographers documenting the charitable contributions of New York's elite. Dante's security created a buffer around us, but I still felt exposed as we walked the short red carpet. "Mr. Russo," one photographer called. "Who's your date?" Dante's arm tightened protectively around my waist. "This is Emma Collins," he said simply, offering no explanation or title. Inside, the ballroom was a symphony of crystal, flowers, and candlelight. Heads turned as we entered, whispers following in our wake. I spotted Janet and the Hudson Publishing table, their expressions ranging from shock to curiosity as Dante guided me toward them. "Ms. Wilson," Dante greeted Janet smoothly. "Thank you for championing Emma's talents. Her insights are valuable to the company." Janet seemed momentarily flustered, clearly not expecting the owner to acknowledge her directly. "Of course, Mr. Russo. Emma has been a wonderful addition to our team." The evening progressed in a surreal blur. Dante introduced me to publishing executives, authors, and business associates with a quiet pride that made me stand taller. When we danced, his hand firm at the small of my back, he never took his eyes off me, as if I were the only person in the room. Everyone is watching us, I murmured, as we swayed to the music. Let them, he replied, pulling me imperceptibly closer. I'm not hiding how I feel about you. The intensity in his eyes made my heart race. And how do you feel? Instead of answering, he lowered his head, pressing a gentle kiss to my lips. Right there on the dance floor, in front of Manhattan's elite, declaring his intentions without words. When we broke apart, I saw Michael across the room, his expression thunderous as he watched us. Beside him stood the blonde from the club that first night, her face a mask of envy. The sight might have bothered me weeks ago, but now it seemed insignificant compared to the man holding me in his arms. Later that night, as Dante's car pulled up to my apartment building, a strange tension filled the air. We'd barely spoken on the ride home, the events of the evening, his public claiming of me, the reactions, the dance floor kiss, settling between us like a physical presence. Would you like to come up? The words left my lips before I could reconsider. Surprising both of us, Dante's eyes darkened with desire, but he hesitated. Are you sure? In answer, I leaned across the seat and kissed him, pouring weeks of pent-up passion into the connection. His response was immediate, arms pulling me against him, control slipping for the first time since I'd met him. Minutes later, we were in my tiny apartment, the door barely closed before Dante had me pressed against it, his mouth hungry against mine. My hands pushed his jacket from his shoulders, his fingers tangling in my hair as we stumbled toward my bedroom. In the soft light of my bedside lamp, Dante paused, his expression suddenly serious. Emma, he breathed, cupping my face in his hands. I need you to be sure. Looking into his eyes, I finally understood what had been building between us from that first confrontation at the nightclub. This wasn't just desire or fascination. It was something deeper, more profound. Something that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure, I'm sure, I whispered, reaching for him. Hours later, I lay curled against Dante's chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my bare shoulder, the comfortable silence between us speaking volumes. Stay. I murmured sleepily, not wanting the night to end. He pressed a kiss to my forehead. As long as you want me to. In that moment, with the city lights filtering through my cheap blinds and the most powerful man in New York holding me like I was precious, I realized I'd crossed a threshold. There was no going back to the invisible girl I'd been before that fateful night at Velvet. For better or worse, my life had become intertwined with Dante Russo's, and despite every warning, every rumor, every rational thought, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. What happens now? I asked, tilting my head to meet his gaze. His dark eyes, usually so guarded, were open and vulnerable as he looked down at me. Now, he said softly, we build something real. I smiled, nestling closer to him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, the scrutiny, the dangers of his world, the complexity of balancing my independence with his dominance, I would face them. Because in Dante's arms, I'd found something I hadn't even known I was searching for. Acceptance, passion, and the exhilarating risk of loving someone who lived in the shadows.